Hi. Trying to find a way to position my phone, but this is just so I can have my hands free. But anyway, the other day I was talking to my mum, and she was like, "I saw your video on personality traits. What about coping mechanisms?" So I was like, "Okay, I'll talk about coping mechanisms." And I'm fussy with language, and so I really don't like adaptive versus maladaptive coping strategies because, to me, and I know that's not the initial intention of the thing, but that's just what I put in my brain. One implies good, one implies bad. So I don't tend to use I don't use those terms because I don't like them. And what I do tend to use is I look at coping strategies that fall in one of the three categories. So there are coping strategies that bring relief. There are coping strategies that are sustainable to the system, and then there are coping strategies that actually restore our capacity. And so I'll talk about those in those groups for anyone that is interested. And so coping strategies that bring relief tend to be things like avoiding difficult conversations, people pleasing, staying busy and working really hard. That avoids feelings. Um, Trying to control the situation or other people, ruminating and being in the head and constantly thinking about all the things that are going wrong or went wrong, numbing through, well, there's many ways to numb these days: alcohol, drugs, gaming, shopping. I'm sure there's many more. Self-harming or other kind of risk-taking behaviors, things like that. And they they all bring relief. Otherwise, they wouldn't exist as coping strategies. Like, all of those actually bring relief, temporarily. And unfortunately, at the same time, they are quite depleting to the system. So they don't actually restore anything. But in terms of real time feedback, they work in real time. So that's why people use them. So that's the first category. The second category is strategies that restore the body capacity to manage life, and and everyone dislikes it when I talk about these, and they are your basic self-care stuff like getting enough sleep, eating well regularly, nutritiously, drinking enough water, going outside, moving the body, acknowledging the feelings, doing some breathing, like talking to a friend, like that, co-regulating. The outside of the talking to a friend, most of those strategies are like pretty boring, and people resist them, I think, in a lot of ways because they actually don't provide real-time relief. They don't. And so people are like, that doesn't work for me. And it's not meant to provide relief, it's meant to provide capacity. And without it, you are going to be less able to manage challenges in life. So, boring as they are, they're pretty essential for a reason. And then strategies that are sustainable are ones that we have to learn. They don't, when none of us come pre-built with these. Like, they are strategies that we have to learn either from other people, from professionals, from resources, from just life in general, but they are strategies that are things that have to be practiced, things that have to be learned, and they are hard. So those strategies tend to be things like learning to sit in discomfort. Now, that goes against human nature, full stop. As humans, we seek pleasure and we avoid pain. And so one of the sustainable coping strategies is sitting in pain. Like, no one wants to do that. Like, absolutely no human being that is not seriously messed up wants to be like, yeah, just love sitting in discomfort. And the point isn't just to be like this sadistic thing. It's basically to be able to actually process what's happening, and you can't process something that you can't acknowledge, and processing requires discomfort, full stop. Also, like, if things are happening even in real time and you cannot be uncomfortable, you will be reactive. And a lot of the times, most of the time, that's probably gonna make things more problematic than less. So, learning to sit in discomfort. Setting boundaries. I talked about boundaries before. I'm not going to go on and on about it, but basically, learning to say no, or sometimes actually letting go of people that are not healthy to be around. Most people don't. Well, none of us come like confident in that either. So that's something that needs to be practiced, and confidence grows the more practice we get. The other strategies are talking about things that are challenging. Not to do the whole poor me thing, but to actually get some feedback, to be able to do some self-reflecting, to actually go, okay, well, is there anything that's underlying that's actually driven this thing or behavior or my patterns or whatever? Because until we make the unconscious conscious, we can't change anything. The other things that we have to learn is that certain behaviors have consequences, and so being able to stop and consider what the consequences of each decision may be. The other thing, one crucial one, is actually like listening and becoming really, really conscious of our thoughts, our internal dialogue. Like, what are the things that we're saying to ourselves? How are we talking to ourselves? What is the common kind of like narrative? And separating, learning to separate from our thoughts, because as little people, and a lot of people seem to, well, we think that our thoughts are us, and that's not the case. Like, we're not our thoughts. And unless we can separate ourselves from what's happening inside our head, we cannot make wise decisions, because we're sucked into that whole narrative. So, and none of these skills are fun skills to learn. Like, they suck. Like none of them involve comfort, none of them involve joy, none of them involve real-time relief, none of them involve anything remotely pleasant. However, it's the only way to actually be sustainable in terms of coping with life's challenges while simultaneously looking after ourselves, as well as nurturing the relationships that are important. And I'm not blind to anything. I mean, I'm blind. I'm just not blind to the fact that we will all use all of those. It's just, where's that balance? And for some people, they may only use the ones that bring relief, and for others, there might be a more of an equal balance of the lot. And it really doesn't really matter in the short term what happens. It's just that if you only use the ones that bring short-term relief, then you are going to be depleting yourself in the process. And depending on the risk level of that strategy, you are putting your body, yourself at risk, potentially other people. I understand why they're there. Look, I use some of those strategies myself. Like, I love to avoid unpleasant feelings, and yeah. However, as adults, we kind of have to learn other ways of being too. All right. Hope that helps. Bye.